Testimony Tuesday on Tuesday of Holy Week with Judie Brown. Today on The Simple Truth, we consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong, chaste heart of St. Joseph. I'm your host, Jim Havens, and our guest today is Judie Brown, Catholic wife, mother, and grandmother, co-founder and longtime president of American Life League, ALL.org. For over 45 years, Judie has remained unwavering in her commitment to moral principles, fearlessly defending the Church's teachings on the sanctity of life. She's here today to share some of her personal testimony and good work with us. Judie Brown, welcome to The Simple Truth. How are you today?
Oh, I'm fine. Thank you. How are you?
Doing great. A great blessing to have you with us. And we always begin at the beginning with the personal testimonies here. So what was your early life like, your family, the culture that you grew up in?
Well, I grew up in a Catholic family, and when I met my husband, he too had grown up in a Catholic family, and I think that's one of the things that drew us to each other. And shortly after we were married, of course, we learned that we were expecting our first baby, and we were immediately, if not previous to this time, totally pro-life. So we accepted children as God sent them to us. We expected the fourth child, which turned out to be ovarian cancer. But that was a lesson for us, too, because God calls us to suffer, and God also calls us to accept his will regardless of the situation in which we're in. So over the course of the 53 years of our marriage, Paul and I grew not only closer to each other, but closer to God. And our 3 children and 13 grandchildren are a tremendous testimony to the faith we have in the power of God to bring good out of evil and to bring good out of those who trust in his will. So I'm very happy to be here today. I wish he were here too. But I'm very happy to speak to you about anything having to do with my life that might help your listeners better understand why living the Catholic faith is not a Sunday-only obligation. It's 24/7.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, thank you. And so I have the year of your getting married, you and Paul being married in 1967. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so 1967, you guys are strong pro-life, and so what was that like at that time? It's before Roe. It's even before states. Shortly before states are legalizing child murder, calling it abortion. But in 1967, what was on your radar with respect to the pro-life movement?
Oh, and we got married on the last day of the year in 1967. Okay. So in 1968, we were at Mass one Sunday, and our pastor mentioned the fact that Referendum 20 was going to be on the ballot in the state of Washington, where we lived. And Referendum 20 would have allowed abortion on demand with no regulations at all during the first 3 months of pregnancy and some regulations after that time. And we were appalled, so we joined a local organization that was distributing leafleting to neighbors and friends all around the community where we lived. And we did that. We got a lot of doors slammed in our faces, but we did that as a couple. And I think that really, as a first pro-life experience, the horror of what Father told us was going to happen if this referendum passed, that there would be easy access to abortion for nearly any reason, shocked us into reality. Before that time, I don't think either one of us ever spent a second thinking about abortion or what it was. But after that sermon, we were compelled to take action, which we did. Sadly, we lost that referendum. It was one of the first referendums in the country trying to protect the act of abortion from law. But it taught us a lot of things about the arguments people use to defend their position on abortion. That was in 1968. And today, in 2025, the very same arguments are being used. And it's unfortunate that people who are intransigent when it comes to the act of abortion do not seem to want to consider the fact that 2 people exist during the pregnancy, and one of those people will die during an abortion. And we learned that early on in 1968, and unfortunately, too many people today still do not learn that lesson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll get into that. I mean, I very much resonate with, I think the way that you have seen it over the years, the way you've gone about it, the question that really makes things clear. What about the baby? And so we're going to get into this as we go. But yeah, I think first, even just pausing here and thinking about the fact that it was your parish priest that asked you to get involved in this way, and then this intensified in the years that followed. What was it like around the time of Roe in 1973 when that ruling came down? I mean, I've seen different reports. I wasn't born till 77, but I've seen different reports that it wasn't even the biggest news story that day on the nightly news. It didn't seem like it was on the radar of a lot of people, and it just kind of happened. But it seems like it was probably on your radar. What do you remember about that time?
First of all, I have to admit to you that I was stunned beyond words when the Supreme Court ruled in the Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton, because nobody in the little tiny pro-life movement that existed prior to Roe v. Wade ever thought the court would rule in favor of abortion. It was not at all a consideration for many of us. And now, I mean, at my age, I look back on that Roe v. Wade decision, and I think to the decision that came before it, the Comstock decision the Supreme Court handed down in 1965, decriminalizing birth control. And it is obvious that a natural outcome of allowing birth control with no legal restrictions at all had to be abortion. Because as Dr. Alan Guttmacher said at the time, abortion is a backup birth control method. That's all it really is. He said that publicly. He said that over and over, over and over again. And when you stop and think about it, people who support abortion know that and believe that abortion is simply the thing that you do if contraception fails. I'm sorry. I'm having a terrible time with my throat.
Sure. Yeah, no, feel free to have a little water. And yeah, we'll be back with you in a moment. But it is very interesting. As you mentioned that, I mean, that is very clear and not talked about enough. One who has brought that up, actually, is Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. He brought that up in first the Dobbs decision. He actually makes it a point to go out of his way and say, we need to revisit the Comstock laws. We need to revisit some of the rulings of this court, the Griswold ruling, and he gives the reason why. It's a judicial reason. I don't remember it right off the top of my head, but he says we have to revisit various things, and that's one of them. He also gave an opinion a couple of years before in 2019 in the Box v. Planned Parenthood case, where he goes into the whole eugenics history of both birth control and abortion, Margaret Sanger and Guttmacher, and the eugenic mindset, the eugenic nature of both contraception and abortion that exists, and he's very clear about this. We need to look at this. We need to see this. We haven't, I think, maybe heard enough about that, but certainly that's something that you've seen over the years. American Life League has certainly tried to shine a light on over the years. Anything else you want to say about that?
Justice Thomas, I have to say, is one of the most incredibly deep-thinking justices we've had on the Supreme Court in a very long time. And what he's pointing out is the history of eugenics, which goes all the way back to, in our country to the early 1900s. Once people decide, and a mechanism of action is put in place to decide which people are allowed to be born and how you're going to control the birth of others, you automatically enter the era that Margaret Sanger called the pivot of civilization, where human beings decide that they will act like God. They will decide whether or not they want to be pregnant. They will decide whether or not they want to continue a pregnancy. And the horror of that is decisions to kill people, which evades the public conscience now more than ever before.
Yeah, absolutely. And so all of this for you, so strong Catholic faith, also convicted on pro-life, especially as you see this evil advancing, child murder becoming legalized throughout the nation under Roe and Doe, and allowed really throughout all phases of pregnancy as well. And so just to see this evil pushed in, ushered in as it was, it seemed like there was a pretty strong Catholic response at the time. I go back to the bishop's plan in 1975. It seemed pretty strong, but sadly, I haven't seen that it was actually implemented. I think that was a big miss, that they didn't implement their 1975 pro-life plan, pastoral plan for pro-life activities. Do you remember anything about that?
Yes, I do, because early on in our existence at American Life League, we tried to meet with the bishops in an effort to help them implement that very plan in the mid-1970s. Sadly, the bishops were not interested in implementation. I'm sorry. They not only were not interested in implementing the plan, but they actually ignored us.
Mm-hmm. Sure,
they did not.
We're going to be back with Judie Brown in just a moment. We're hitting the break here, but yeah, I mean, it's even hard to find that 1975 plan, even online. I do have a copy of it, but yeah, the pastoral plan for pro-life activities by the bishops at that time in the U.S., it was strong. If it would have been implemented, I think the history would have been very different in what happened in the years that followed. One of the things that it was calling for were these congressional district groups that the basically members of the church would facilitate, but it wouldn't be a Catholic thing necessarily, but they would facilitate basically a lobbying effort and start these groups in every congressional district, rallying pro-life people together and getting elected officials to vote pro-life. And if not, they get their own folks elected. It was never implemented. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Judie Brown, co-founder and longtime president of American Life League, ALL.org. And just following up on what I could not recall about the exact wording from Justice Thomas in that last segment. He wrote a concurrence in Dobbs, and he focused on arguing that substantive due process is an oxymoron that, quote, lacks any basis in the Constitution. And he writes, in future cases, we should reconsider all of this court's substantive due process precedents, including Griswold, Lawrence, and Obergefell, because any substantive due process decision is, quote, demonstrably erroneous. He says also after overruling these demonstrably erroneous decisions, the question would remain whether other constitutional provisions guarantee the myriad rights that our substantive due process cases have generated. Now, he's talking about the Supreme Court rulings that have legalized contraception, sodomy, and so-called same-sex marriage. And he's saying these all need to be revisited. So very interesting and important argument that Thomas is making there in the concurrence in Dobbs, not to be lost. And so Judie Brown is with us. We're very, very blessed to have her here. And so in 1976, that's the year I have in my notes, Judie, that you joined the National Right to Life Committee. Can you share what that experience was like?
Well, I went to work for Dr. Mildred Jefferson, who was the president at the time, and she wanted an executive director that she knew and felt that would help get the National Right to Life Committee focused the way she wanted to focus it. So I went to work under her in 76 and left in 79 shortly after she did, because Dr. Jefferson believed, and I concurred with Dr. Jefferson, that in order to end abortion, you first have to educate the public. You have to convince people that there is a baby who exists from the moment of creation, conception, and that baby is an equal partner in the family. He's an equal part of the family. He's a human being. He's a person. And Dr. Jefferson spoke so eloquently about that. And she spoke not only to grassroots people, but she spoke to lawmakers. And she was just one of the most articulate pro-life people I've ever heard in my entire life. And it was an honor and a privilege to work for her. But sadly, as soon as she was ousted, by the committee at the National Right to Life Committee, the whole focus changed to politics and compromise, and so I left. But the bottom line with all of this, and my relationship with Dr. Jefferson and Avowed Methodist proves this, is that the truth doesn't know a religion, and the truth doesn't know a political party. The truth is the truth regardless, because it's a scientific fact in the case of pregnancy that a human being comes into existence at the union of sperm and egg, and that human being's existence is not a matter of politics. It isn't an issue. It isn't a debatable. It's the truth. But once you depart from that truth and start parsing words in order to draw a line somewhere in the sand and say, well, these abortions are okay, but these abortions are not, and so forth, you have laid the principle to rest in the tomb, never to be resurrected again. And unfortunately, and I say this because it's Holy Week and also because I believe it's true, until people believe with their heart and soul and are willing to speak to the truth that abortion kills a person, we are never going to win anything, politically or any other way, because our American society today condones abortion without thought. It's a thoughtless act, and it's advocated by thoughtless people who will not face the fact that an abortion kills somebody. And that is the only message that we have that should resonate with the public. It isn't political. It's educational. Abortion kills people. And that's, it's that simple.
Right. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on this, and the fact that it is look, this ought to be common sense to all of us. The fact that it isn't is very revealing. It's a scientific fact. Life begins at conception, fertilization, and every human being is a human person, and we should not be murdering innocent human beings, innocent human children, and growing in the wombs of their mothers. Obviously, these are children that deserve to be loved, just as we all do. And so, again, we ought to be trying to do everything we can to love one another. And this is where I guess religion comes in. Although, again, this is the golden rule. It's sort of every religion does teach some form of this, it seems. But I think certainly Christ makes it crystal clear. And the Catholic Church leaves you no option in the teachings. Very, very clear that we ought to love one another. And there's a way that this works to love one another. And certainly we don't kill one another. We don't murder one another. That's not okay. And for people to be arguing that it is, and for it to be entrenched, this lie for all of these years, decades and decades. And Judie, you've lived through this. I can't imagine how frustrating it is. I mean, I have some sense of it because I've lived through decades of this as well, and have been in the fight for a couple decades here. But you, a lot longer than me, you've seen all of this unfold. And then, yes, what about leaving National Right to Life, where some have framed this? I was kind of doing a little bit of research on this, what actually was the rift, and it seems that some frame it with this sort of wording. They say that it's a rift of moral absolutism versus political pragmatism. Is that how you see it? Is that the language you would use? How would you describe the two different positions between yourself and then National Right to Life when you left?
The truth and deception.
Okay.
That's all it is. The truth is that a human being's life begins at the beginning. And if you step forward as a member of the pro-life community, you do so because you believe in the sanctity of human life. It doesn't mean that you believe in exceptions. It doesn't mean you believe in pragmatism. It means you believe that every single human being has a right to life, and you are standing up for them to defend every single one of them without exception. The National Right to Life Committee's position of pragmatism is false. There is no pragmatic approach to murder. It either is wrong or it is right. And once you make the choice that murder is wrong, abortion is wrong, that's it. You cannot compromise.
Yeah, 100% agree. Absolutely. And the fact that their title is National Right to Life, You would hope that they would get that. And then the fact that they don't, yes, that is very, very deceptive. And to say that, we'll be fine with passing laws that will save some people, but will deny other innocent people the right to life, and they can be murdered. That's okay. But, we're going to save some in this way, and to try to square it that way. Now, I would say, and I think you would agree with this, there are some positions you can take that would be pragmatic to move in a principled way forward. And I think, though, all of this has to be framed with exactly what you're saying. The message has to be, look, we need to end this child murder. We need to abolish abortion. This is not okay in any way. This needs to be ended. That's what the goal is. That's what we're after. And to be very, very clear about that, and to lay out those points about the science and about the basic morality here and all of that. But then to say, okay, well, you guys aren't there yet. Well, all right, we'll take what we can get while we continue to move towards the goal, and we'll be clear about that. But there are only certain things that you can do that with, like I guess a sort of like a heartbeat bill, for instance. You could do a heartbeat bill, but you can't do the exceptions, right? And even the heartbeat bill is still inherently trying to say that there are some that younger than this that we're okay with killing. I guess one that would be allowable would be like a parental notification, if there were, or a parental consent, even better, if there's no if there's no exceptions on it, right? That is something that we would say, okay, yeah, that's a good step forward, but we're still pushing to end it. I don't know. What would you say about any sort of step, any sort of stages to move forward?
Well, I think you have to be really careful with parental consent, because every single bill I've ever seen has a judicial bypass in it, which means if a young person, the girl who is pregnant, says she can't talk to her parents about it, she can go to the court instead and get the decision ultimately that she wants. If she wants an abortion and can argue her case, she will be allowed to have an abortion. So parental consent laws are flawed. I think the problem with partial birth abortion is that there are exceptions in that kind of a proposal as well. And, if you're going to have a conversation about a baby, you don't say, well, if the baby is going to be killed this way, we'll oppose that as long as there are no exceptions. Or if the baby's going to be killed that way, we won't. The problem is you can't have a half-hearted proposal that will make it politically in any framework. You have to stick to the principle that an abortion kills a person, and make sure that you work only for those laws and amendments of the Constitution that put forth the very principle that you're defending, which is a human being as a person, and there's no excuse to murder that innocent person. And after all these years, we have not learned that lesson, and that's why today there are more abortions than ever before.
Yeah. What was your thought? I know that you, well, first let me just mention in 1979, you and your husband, Paul, were among a group co-founders of American Life League, April 1st, 1979. And you did have an uncompromising stance advocating for the protection of human life from the moment of first fertilization without exceptions. And so I want to mention that, but also I guess I want to ask you right away about your relationship with President Reagan, the Reagan administration. It seems you were given a position, you earned a position there on Reagan's pro-life committee. Now we hear Trump saying, well, Reagan was for exceptions, I'm for exceptions. Reagan wasn't really completely for exception. What was your recollection of Reagan and President Reagan and his administration? What are your thoughts looking back on it?
Well, the first meeting we had at the White House with President Reagan was 1982, and Paul and I both spoke to him about exceptions, and he had an exception to the life of the mother. That was the only exception he had. And by the time he left office, he didn't have any exceptions. As he says in Abortion of the Conscience of a Nation, his book, he learned over time that no exception was worthy of his support. And I don't think that's because any one of us posed an argument to him. I think he was able to use common sense and come to the conclusion that abortion kills a person, and no matter what the argument might be in favor of it, it's not going to hold water for that baby. That baby is going to die. And that's why he wrote the book, Abortion, the Conscience of a Nation, which I might add, I don't think Donald Trump has ever read.
I don't think a lot of people have read it. In fact, I didn't even know about it. It wasn't on my radar until I was doing research for this show today. And I came across it when I was looking some things up. And yeah, this is very interesting. I ordered it. I'm looking forward to it coming and reading it. Abortion and the Conscience of the Nation, a book that was written by President Ronald Reagan while he was the sitting president. And yeah, very, very, very important, I think, for us to read through this now, especially when he's being invoked by Trump as sort of the model of Trump's policies. It seems quite unfairly. So yeah, we'll revisit that in the coming days as well. But we've got Judie Brown with us, president of American Life League, co-founder of American Life League, ALL.org. Check out all the good work there. When we get back, we're going to have more with Judie. But yeah, we're going to follow up and learn more about what was her experience like serving, appointed by both Pope John Paul II and Pope Benedict XVI on the Pontifical Academy for Life. I have that she served 3 terms there. We'll ask her about that. She's also written 12 books, including her autobiography, continues to write columns and do gracious appearances like this in media. And we're very, very blessed to have her with us today. So we're looking forward to having her back in the next segment. Get ready. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Judie Brown, co-founder and longtime president of American Life League, ALL.org. Judie, I want to take you back for a moment to 1974, the first March for Life, led by Nellie Gray. And what was your recollection of the March for Life beginning? What was your relationship like with Nellie Gray? What can you share with us?
Well, I love Nellie Gray because she stood on principle, and she taught me what it really means to be pro-life, which means never to back down and to no exceptions, no compromise. That was the theme of the March for Life for all the years that Nellie led it. She was a delightful person. She was a brilliant attorney, and she spoke from the heart when she spoke about abortion. She made many, many television appearances and public appearances elsewhere. And she had a consistent theme, which was you can't compromise because every single one of these babies is precious to God, and therefore they're precious to us. I helped her with the March for Life in 1975 and 76, and then subsequently we promoted the March for Life at American Life League for years, but we don't promote it anymore because it's kind of fallen by the wayside since she passed away. God rest her soul. But she taught me the basic principles of personhood. She, in fact, had the life principles, were the principles of the March for Life in those days. And there was no place for compromise in Nellie Gray's mind, as there isn't in mine. And she taught me a lot of that just by listening to her and by working next to her. So I have great memories of Nellie Gray. I loved her very much. We had a lot of fun together, too.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And what would you say, looking back now? It seems sadly that the position of no compromises, no exceptions, that is the right position. We cannot compromise when it comes to child murder, mass murder of innocent children every day. That's what we're talking about with abortion and even beyond abortion, with respect to IVF, with respect to various experimentation that goes on human embryos. Every human being is a human person and deserves protection and can't be treated as merely things that we can do whatever we want with. That ought to all be common sense. The sad fact that it isn't, the fact that the pro-life movement by and large has sort of abandoned this sort of messaging for softer messaging that really is kind of lacks any urgency to end it, and it seems to kind of just sort of be okay with continuing to do a lot of fundraising and just keep doing some stuff, but and maybe some of it good. Obviously, a lot of it is good, but not pushing to the end of it. What has that been like to see that has really been the bulk of where the pro-life movement has gone? done. And yet, Nellie has passed. You remain. Is there anybody else still out there that we can look to? Father Stephen Imbarato and I are kind of beating the drum on personhood here and doing what we can with the Men's March. But is there anybody else still around that you want to mention that really is still holding the line and would be one to watch?
Well, I'm going to start with a quote from Pope Benedict, God rest his soul. The world waxes cold to sin. And that is the problem with the leadership of the pro-life movement these days, maybe with the exception of Lila Rose. And that is that the country has become unable to deal with the reality of what abortion does to a person. And so, like everything else, it turns to politics. And when that happens, bad things happen, as we have learned from 50 years of trying to get a human life amendment through Congress. Now they don't even talk about it anymore. But what Pope Benedict said is true. The world waxes cold to sin. Abortion is a sin. And until we as a pro-life movement can unite behind the truth that abortion is an act that takes the life of a person, we are going to continue to see many, many people fall away who should be on our side and should be beating the drums with us, so to speak. Father Stephen is a great example of somebody who won't back down.
Yep.
Lila Rose won't back down, but there aren't enough people who will stand on the principle and simply say it because it's the truth. I mean, what is so hard about telling the truth these days? Even if it upsets people, as Father Bob Buckley, who used to be the spiritual director of American Life League, once said, if you prick the conscience of a person because you have raised their awareness to the fact that abortion does kill a person, you have started the changing of heart that has to occur before a person can see the reality of what abortion does to a baby. And that's what we're called to do. We're not called to go out and change the world. We're called to go out and preach the truth and let the chips fall where they may. And we don't have enough people willing to do that. And that's what the problem is, Jim. I mean, quite frankly.
Yeah, Judie Brown is with us, ALL.org. Judie, share with us about your experience on the Pontifical Academy for Life. What was that like?
Oh, it was a great honor to serve. I was appointed by Pope John Paul II. I served under him for 10 years, and then under Pope Benedict for 5 years. But it was a group of academics, grassroots leaders like me, and educators who came together once a year and talked about what needed to be done in the various countries. Of course, the whole world was represented on the academy, and we had substantive plans that we could take home and share with the leaders in the United States, which we did, those of us who were Americans, and all over the world. And they were all substantially based on the truth that abortion kills a person. And how do you teach this? How do you teach about contraception? How do you teach about in vitro fertilization? And we spent 4 days in the Vatican, hammering out position papers that we could share with our friends and with our co-workers and with the general public. And it was probably the most beneficial experience I ever had in my life, working with world leaders from all over the place, with a common denominator of Pope John Paul II or Pope Benedict, neither of whom would ever compromise for anything on any topic. So it was it helped me to see the worldwide problem of abortion, but it also helped me to become acquainted with all the world leaders all around the world who were working together for the common goal of protecting every single baby without exception. And it was a great blessing to me. And most of my friends, I'm 81 years old now, so most of the people that were on the academy with me have either met God or are in the same situation I am. They're older now. But we all had this common sense of purpose because Pope John Paul II and then Pope Benedict just instilled this hope that if you stuck to the truth would, as Christ said, set you free. And that's a great experience for anyone to have at any point in their life. And I'm so grateful that thanks to Pope John Paul II, I had the opportunity to have that for 15 years.
Out of all those leaders, are there any that you'd like to mention that that we ought to know about, that maybe are lesser known or people have forgotten? Maybe we should go back and read what they have written. Anybody that comes to mind that you'd like to kind of just shine a light on for us today?
I'd love to shine a light on Pope John Paul II's Gospel of Life, yes, because that encyclical was written in 1995. And every single word of it is just as valid today in 2025 as it was when it was written. And it meant so much to us at American Life League that we published a series of study guides to help people really get the most they possibly could out of that encyclical. And all of those study guides are still valid as well.
Great.
I think the other person that I would mention who, because he's now gone, is rarely noted is Professor Jerome Lejeune, the father of modern genetics, the doctor who discovered Down syndrome. And his writings are also extremely valuable because he wrote from the heart about these little children who he cared for himself in his children's hospital in France, and all of the wonderful things that he was able to do with Down syndrome children, who today, as you know, 95% of them are aborted. And I think, there are so many people like that I could mention, but Jerome Lejeune is by far my favorite hero because he stood up against the crowd, so to speak, and he just wouldn't back away from the truth. He even testified in Congress. He testified in Tennessee during the Davis v. Davis case when those embryos, the mother wanted to kill them, the father wanted to save them, and Dr. Lejeune went to Tennessee to testify in defense of the human embryos because, as he said, every single human embryo is a person. You can't just arbitrarily throw them away.
Yes. Yeah, Judie Brown is with us, ALL.org. And we're in the 30th anniversary of Evangelium Vitae, the Gospel of Life. So ALL.org. Check out those study guides. I definitely am going to check out those study guides. So thank you for mentioning all of that. And you mentioned also the Human Life Amendment. That was also in the bishop's plan back in 1975, very prominent in that plan. And then it kind of was weakened in successive updates of that plan, and then now it's kind of like non-existent at this point. What is your thought at this point? Especially, I guess I want to ask you in light of the new scholarship that we have that has come our way via the Finnis George amicus brief in the Dobbs case that really makes a rock solid case, an avalanche of evidence, as Dr. George says, and I think it's true with regard to the fact that the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause in the 14th Amendment, the original intent at the time was to include unborn children. And so therefore, look, every human being is a human person. Every single life from conception, fertilization, every human embryo, they are protected under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. We need the Supreme Court to take up a case and rule on that and say so. That would protect every human life from the beginning immediately if they would rule that way. And that really is the only way, I think, to rule on it when you really look at the facts. What is your thought in looking at that amicus brief, that argument? I guess is that, Father Imbrato and I, we think pretty strongly, we agree with it, and we say this seems like we're at the moment that we're in. If we could find a way to get this before the court and force the court to rule on it, we're kind of in a moment where the makeup of the court, they would hopefully go the right way on it. And again, you're telling the truth and let the chips fall where they may. What is your thought on it?
I am a great admirer of John Finnis and Robert George. And I think that the point they make is that when you approach the natural law, you're not approaching a political position.
Right.
The natural law is the Ten Commandments. And so there's no question that the human being is a person from the moment he exists. And John Finnis and Robert George agree with that. They've written about it. They've argued in favor of it. And I hope that the Supreme Court pays attention to them, because these are two of the most just blessed beyond measure intellectual giants of our time. They have come together to give us a solid argument, philosophical, moral, and legal, that should be accepted by the court. And I'm just hopeful that it will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's wonderful. And we everybody needs to I would say read that amicus brief, the Finis George amicus brief, be updated on it. We've tried to make it very simple in the way that we talk about it. And it's really not that hard to understand. The points are very simple, but this audience is intelligent. You guys could read that amicus brief, no problem. And I think you'd find it very enjoyable to see the argument unfold that they put forward. And then, we need to speak up and we need to do what we can to lend our voices to the grassroots movement to try to get this before the court, demand that the Supreme Court does their job. Judie, what else have you seen over the years that you think is very important to highlight today and let people know about?
Well, I want to get back to the Finis George brief for a moment, because As soon as somebody mentions a legal brief, people's eyes glaze over and they figure they can't understand it. It is simple. It's one of the most beautifully written, oversimplified arguments I've ever read. So I encourage people to get a copy of it and read it. And the other thing that I've seen in my years in the pro-life movement is when you try to complicate the question of a human person by throwing in exceptions, by throwing in debates, by throwing in questions about at what stage will we defend them, you're really saying you don't believe there's a human being in existence in any situation. And that's bad for all of us. Old people, young people, everybody.
Yes, it goes back to, again, Pope St. John Paul II. He gives us the great vision, right? To build up this civilization of love, a civilization of authentic love. So that's the positive vision here. Obviously, murdering innocent human beings is not part of a vision of love. It goes completely against it. We're going to be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Judie Brown, co-founder, longtime president of American Life League, ALL.org. Final segment here. Judie, I want to give you the floor. Anything else that you want to share with us today, go for it.
I want to make sure that people understand how difficult it is for an 81-year-old woman to speak, first of all. And I'm sorry for all the interruption. That's why I don't give speeches anymore. I want people to remember that when it probably sounds oversimplified to your listeners, but it really isn't. As we stand before God and He asks us what we've done for Him and for His children, we cannot answer Him that we tried our best, but we had to support exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother, or we couldn't get anything done politically. I don't think that's going to be very satisfying to God. When God asks us what we've done for His children, He means exactly that. What have we as pro-lifers done to save babies from being killed by abortion? There are no exceptions in God's plan. There are no exceptions in the Ten Commandments. And so for us, there should be no exceptions when it comes to abortion. We strive to defend, protect, and enshrine the right to life of the human being in our Constitution in every way we possibly can. We should not accept politicians who take watered-down positions, nor should we accept that from any of our friends and relatives or the groups that we belong to. We should be confident in the truth. And the truth is that a human being's life begins at the moment of fertilization. And therefore, we, as human beings who survived the womb, are obligated to stand up and defend all of them, without exception, without apology, without compromise. To do anything less, in my view, is an offense against God, and it condemns babies to death. And that's my message.
Outstanding. Judie Brown is with us, ALL.org. And Judie, what about for someone who's listening and they understand, no exceptions for rape and incest. They get that. We shouldn't kill an innocent person because of the circumstances of their conception. But they get kind of confused about the life of the mother exception. Can you clarify that? Explain why that is not a good exception.
Certainly, I don't have to, because over 50 OBGYN several years ago signed a statement that said, in today's practice of maternal medicine, there is no argument in favor of aborting a baby or taking the life of the mother, because both can be saved safely and with proper clinical care, both can survive. So the life of the mother exception today is a red herring that is used by those who don't want to accept what the doctor said is the fact. If medicine can save both the mother and the baby, why can't we just say that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very well said. And on the exceptions of rape and incest, I remember not long ago, somebody I haven't been on social media really putting much out there for quite a while, but I remember one time when I was on there a few years back, and somebody got very upset with me. Somebody back from, I think, high school or something that saw me on the social media platform and was very upset about what I was saying about abortion. And their argument, they just kind of went off. It was not rational, but they just kept saying, "Oh, you're going to force my daughter to give birth. It's forced birth." Well, this seems to be kind of a new twist on the argument. Forced birth is what they want to label it. What do you say to somebody who tries to make that argument? How would you recommend people set them straight?
Well, I think we have to take a look at this from the hard reality of what it is. Rape and incest are very cruel, severe acts that are perpetrated by violent men, not little babies. So if we could put as much energy into making sure that the men who perpetrate these crimes are brought to justice and made to pay for what they've done, as people do trying to make excuses for why the baby in the situation, the innocent child, should be killed, I might have some understanding, but they don't. The very people who argue that rape and incest babies should be put to death are the very people who won't say we have to do everything we possibly can to make sure the criminals who perpetrated these acts are put away. The baby is not the criminal. The baby is an innocent product of the act. And if the mother cannot tolerate having that baby in her sight, she can give that baby up for adoption. But killing that baby is not the proper response in those cases.
Right. Yeah. The two separate things going on. The evil that has already been done. Right. And then and then the question is, what do we do now? And it's not do more evil and bring more trauma on this mother as well as a byproduct of doing more evil, of killing the child. It's, again, back to this building up a civilization of authentic love and looking at the situation and say, OK, how do we best handle this? Right. And so obviously you want to help the mother to handle it well. So, yeah, I mean, some sort of mental health counseling or therapy may be necessary there. Well, provide it, help out. Right. So there are ways of dealing with it the best possible way that you can. But yeah, the evil, there has been an evil inflicted. And to be very clear about that, I think is absolutely important, and to deal with that evil appropriately for sure. Judie, only a couple minutes to go. Anything else you want to share with us today?
You can never make a mistake when you're defending life if you affirm the lives of everyone involved. Affirm the baby, affirm the mother, affirm the father, unless the father, of course, is a criminal. But never is the baby a criminal. The baby is a human being who God has blessed that mother with. Regardless of the circumstance, that baby is still a blessing. And I thank God for every single baby who has been brought into this world, and I hope that many, many more are in the future.
Yes. Yeah. And also, I want to make mention that you remain active, leading American Life League alongside your son Hugh and your granddaughter Katie, and proving that the mission is not just historical; it's ongoing. Your family remains active and involved, and Hugh serving as executive vice president, Katie as director of communications. We've had them both on the show. Hugh has been to our Men's March multiple times. It's been great getting to know him some. And we do have a new, the next National Men's March to Abolish Abortion Rally for Personhood coming up in Washington, D.C., June 7th. All the information at themensmarch.com. Bishop Strickland is going to be there. Pam Stenzel is going to be there. Walter and Lori Hoy will be there as well. Many more. But we want you to be there. Come and join us, themensmarch.com. Judie, anything to share about your family, about all.org, continuing strong? Anything else on that?
I think your announcement about the Men's March is a perfect segue to what I want to say in closing, which is that this is a family organization, American Life League. We stand for the family. We stand for every member of the family. But we focus our attention on the preborn child because she and he are very much in danger, even today, under this president that we have currently. And it's up to us to pray, to fast, and to work in defense of every single human life and never leave anyone behind.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very well said. And yeah, that's one of the aspects of our message that we're bringing there to DC, calling on President Trump to do something that he is showing no desire to do, and that is to sign an executive order on the personhood of the preborn. If he would simply do that, some have called it the Lincoln proposal. But if he would do that, a simple signing, one stroke of the pen, such an executive order, it would, and to even say as he's doing this, look, this is not a political thing. Take it out of politics. I want the Supreme Court to finally deal with this question and answer it about the 14th Amendment and the Equal Protection Clause. Are unborn children persons or are they not? Of course they are. But what that would do is trigger the Supreme Court. They would be forced to take up the case in that scenario. And so we're calling on President Trump to sign such an executive order. So yes, pray and fast and join us at the Men's March, themensmarch.com. Judie Brown, you are an absolute blessing and such a wonderful witness for so many of us. I certainly am very, very grateful for you and for all that you have done and continue to do. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you very much, and God bless you.
And I want to encourage everybody again, American Life League, ALL.org. They're the real deal. Support American Life League. Check out all the resources they've got there, ALL.org. God bless you all.